Oh, didn't see you there. Looks like someone else can't sleep tonight. After everything we've gone through, thunder is what scares you. Who would have thought? You know, my parents used to read to me every time I couldn't sleep. Anne wasn't a big fan of their stories, but I was. One of my favorites was called The Tale of Three Brothers. Heard of it? Thought so. Wait, I know that face. Do you really want to hear that bedtime story? Who would have thought that a fifth year still liked bedtime stories? What? Don't look at me like that. You know I'm just joking. Anyways, lay down comfortably. There were once three brothers who were traveling along a lonely, winding road at twilight. In time, the brothers reached a river too deep to wade through and too dangerous to swim across. However, these brothers were learned in the magical arts, and so they simply waved their wands and made a bridge appear across the treacherous water. They were halfway across it when they found their path blocked by a hooded figure, and it was Death. He was angry that he had been cheated out of 3 new victims, for travelers usually drowned in the river. But Death was cunning. He pretended to congratulate the 3 brothers upon their magic, and said that each had earned a prize for being clever enough to evade him. So the oldest brother, who was a combative man, asked for a wand more powerful than any in existence, a wand that must always win battles for its owner, a wand worthy of a wizard who had conquered death. So Death had crossed to an elder tree on the banks of the river, fashioned a wand from a branch that had hung there, and gave it to the oldest brother. Then the second brother, who was an arrogant man, decided that he wanted to humiliate Death still further, and asked for the power to recall others from death. So, Death picked up a stone from the riverbank and gave it to the second brother, and told him that the stone would have the power to bring back the dead. Finally, Death turned to the third brother. A humble man, he asked for something that would enable him to go forth from that place without being followed by Death. And so it was that Death reluctantly handed over his own cloak of invisibility. In due course, the brothers separated, each for his own destination. The first brother travelled for a week or more, and reaching a distant village, sought out a fellow wizard, with whom he had a quarrel. Naturally, with the Elder Wand as his weapon, he could not fail to win the duel that followed. Leaving his enemy dead upon the floor, the oldest brother proceeded to an inn, where he boasted of the powerful wand which he had snatched from Death himself, and of how it made him invincible. That very night, another wizard crept upon the oldest brother as he lay wine-sodden upon his bed. The thief took the wand and, for good measure, slit the oldest brother's throat. And so, Death took the first brother for his own. Meanwhile, the second brother journeyed to his own home, where he lived alone. Here, he took out the stone which had the power to recall the dead, and turned it thrice in his hand. To his amazement and delight, the figure of the girl he had once hoped to marry, before her untimely death, appeared at once before him. Yet she was sad and cold, separated from him as though by a veil. Though she had returned to the mortal world, she did not truly belong there, and suffered. Finally, the second brother, driven mad by hopeless longing, killed himself so as to truly join her. And so Death took the second brother for his own. But though Death searched for the third brother for many years, he was never able to find him. It was only when he had attained a great age that the youngest brother finally took off the cloak of invisibility and gave it to his son. And then he greeted Death as an old friend, went with him gladly, and as equals they departed this life. Hey, are you asleep? Still awake, I see. I know another story. My mother's favourite, in fact. Or at least it was the one she always read to me. Gosh, I think she read it like 50 times or so. It's funny. What I would give to hear her read it one more time. Anyways, it's called The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. Let me just find the page quickly. Ah, here it is. There was once a kindly old wizard who used his magic generously and wisely for the benefit of his neighbours. Rather than reveal the true source of his power, he pretended that his potions, charms, and antidotes sprang ready-made from the little cauldron he called his lucky cooking pot. From miles around, people came to him with their troubles, and the wizard was pleased to give his pot a stir and put things right. This well-beloved wizard lived to a goodly age, then died, leaving all his chattels to his only son. This son was of a very different disposition to his gentle father. Those who could not work magic were, to the son's mind, worthless, and he had often quarrelled with his father's habit of dispensing magical aid to their neighbours. Upon the father's death, the son found hidden inside the old cooking pot a small package bearing his name. He opened it, hoping for gold, but found instead a soft, thick slipper, much too small to wear, and with no pair. A fragment of parchment within the slipper bore the words, "In the fond hope, my son, that you will never need it." The son cursed his father's age-softened mind, then threw the slipper back into the cauldron, resolving to use it henceforth as a rubbish pail. That very night, a peasant woman knocked on the front door. "My granddaughter is afflicted by a crop of warts, sir," she told him. "Your father used to mix a special poultice in that old cooking pot." "Begone!" cried the son. "What care I for your brat's warts?" And he slammed the door in the old woman's face. At once there came a loud clanging and banging from his kitchen. The wizard lit his wand and opened the door, and there, to his amazement, he saw his father's old cooking pot. It had sprouted a single foot of brass, and was hopping on the spot, in the middle of the floor, making a fearful noise upon the flagstones. The wizard approached it in wonder, but fell back hurriedly when he saw that the whole of the pot's surface was covered in warts. "Disgusting object!" he cried, and he tried firstly to vanish the pot, then to clean it by magic, and finally to force it out of the house. None of his spells worked, however, and he was unable to prevent the pot hopping after him out of the kitchen and then following him up to bed, clanging and banging loudly on every wooden stair. The wizard could not sleep all night for the banging of the warty old pot by his bedside, and next morning the pot insisted upon hopping after him to the breakfast table. Clang, clang, clang went the brass-footed pot, and the wizard had not even started his porridge when there came another knock on the door. An old man stood on the doorstep. "'Tis my old donkey, sir," he explained. "Lost she is, or stolen, and without her I cannot take my wares to market, and my family will go hungry tonight." "And I am hungry now!" roared the wizard, and he slammed the door upon the old man. Clang, clang, clang went the cooking pot's single brass foot upon the floor, but now its clamour was mixed with the brays of a donkey and human groans of hunger, echoing from the depths of the pot. "Be still, be silent," shrieked the wizard, but not all his magical powers could quieten the warty pot, which hopped at his heels all day, braying and groaning and clanging, no matter where he went or what he did. That evening there came a third knock upon the door, and there on the threshold stood a young woman sobbing as though her heart would break. "My baby is grievously ill," she said. "Won't you please help us? Your father bade me come if troubled." But the wizard slammed the door on her, and now the tormenting pot filled to the brim with salt water and slopped tears all over the floor as it hopped and brayed and groaned and sprouted more warts. Though no more villagers came to seek help at the wizard's cottage for the rest of the week, the pot kept him informed of their many ills. Within a few days, it was not only braying and groaning and slopping and hopping and sprouting warts, it was also choking and retching, crying like a baby, whining like a dog, and spewing out bad cheese and sour milk and a plague of hungry slugs. The wizard could not sleep or eat with the pot beside him, but the pot refused to leave, and he could not silence it or force it to be still. At last the wizard could bear it no more. "Bring me all your problems, all your troubles and your woes!" he screamed, fleeing into the night, with the pot hopping behind him along the road into the village. "Come, let me cure you, mend you and comfort you. I have my father's cooking pot, and I shall make you well." And with the foul pot still bounding along behind him, he ran up the street, casting spells in every direction. Inside one house, the little girl's warts vanished as she slept. The lost donkey was summoned from a distant briar patch and set down softly in its stable. The sick baby was doused in dittany and woke, well and rosy. At every house of sickness and sorrow, the wizard did his best, and gradually the cooking pot beside him stopped groaning and retching, and became quiet, shiny and clean. "Well, Pot?" asked the trembling wizard as the sun began to rise. The pot burped out the single slipper he had thrown into it, and permitted him to fit it onto the brass foot. Together they set off back to the wizard's house, the pot's footstep muffled at last. But from that day forward, The wizard helped the villagers like his father before him, lest the pot cast off its slipper and begin to hop once more. Are you asleep now? You know I never noticed you snored so much. Better carry you back to bed then. Oh, you're heavier than I thought. Are you pretending to sleep so I have to carry you around the common room? Thank Merlin nobody else is awake to see this. Rumors would fly if they saw us like this.